Hello, good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well. So we continue today, lecture number 3 for QQRM or Quantitative and Qualitative Research Methods subject. I'm Dr. Abdul Haq Sinajki. So please be reminded that my consultation hour will be on a Monday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and Thursday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Using Microsoft Teams. You can email me at abdulhaq@utah.edu.my if you have any question. Also, you can check the YouTube channel, Economic and Research Channels, and you can find relevant videos for the research methods and some statistical approaches. So today we are going to talk about mixed research methods. We have already discussed about quantitative research method and qualitative research methods, and now we will discuss the possibilities and the approaches that we use when mixing both quantitative and qualitative research methods. So first, there is many ways how to mix them. You put the emphasis on the problem, but maybe not the methods. So many combinations are found in broad range of research topic, like using experiment with a questionnaire, field study with an experiment, interviews with a questionnaire, a participant observation with an experiment. Or if you emphasize more in the method, also you can include both qualitative and quantitative research method, in a single study. So first, what is it? I mean, what is research methods? I mean that from the term itself is a mixture between two things or more. So mixed method research is a methodology for conducting research that involves collecting, analyzing, and integrating or mixing quantitative and qualitative research and data in a single study or a longitudinal program or longitudinal study of inquiry. So the purpose here, is that both qualitative and quantitative research in combination provide a better understanding of research problem or the issue that you are investigating than either research approach alone. Means if you remember that if you just study a qualitative research, then you may have a problem of generalization. You can have a rich description of phenomenon that you are investigating, but you may have the problem of generalizing, and also the data or sample size is very few, and that might be a problem. But if you are doing a pure quantitative, you may generalize your finding, but again you may not answer the research question in depth, or you may not have an in-depth analysis of that because numbers may not tell the whole story, rather than when people describe the experiences. So in order to have both sides a rich description with a possibility of generalization, then we use the mixed method research. So when you are going to use mixed method research, so we use it when both quantitative and qualitative data together provide a better understanding of your research problem than either type by itself. I explained. So you will have a rich description, from the qualitative, and you will have a generalization from the quantitative. And also want to provide a complete picture of a research problem. So in qualitative, the trend and describing the population, and in qualitative, the participant words. So you mix numbers with a thematic analysis. And also when you want to build from one phase of the study to another, means that you explore qualitatively, then develop an instrument. And this is where, for example, you study a phenomenon, and in literature does not have a strong theoretical background. So you don't know what variables you're going to use. Then you start doing qualitative research, develop the thematic, then you will follow up with developing a question on an instrument based on that variable. So also how this method can be mixed. We have several type of mixing. We have two type of research design, one fitting a quantitative approach and the other qualitative. The manner in which the research questions are developed, for example, pre-planned quantitative versus participatory or emergent qualitative. And also we have two type of sampling procedures, probability versus purposive. And we have two types of data collection procedures, surveys in quantitative versus focus group or interviews in qualitative. Then we have two types of data analysis, numerical versus visual or textual or thematic. And we have two types of data analysis, statistical versus thematic. And we have two types of conclusion. The quantitative is more to objective, and the qualitative is more to subjective interpretation. Mixing the quant and qualitative data, we have three types. We have connecting, we have merging and embedding. In connecting, the type of design usually we use sequential. And why mixing occur? Because one phase built on the other. So between data analysis phase 1 and the data collection phase 2. And also the second type is merging, and this type of design we use concurrent, means that bringing results together after the analysis of both quantitative and qualitative data, typically in the discussion. And another one, which is embedding, could be sequential or concurrent, but here means either building or bring a result together, where either between phases or in discussion after the analysis. We will see those all types in details in coming slides. So when planning your mixed method procedures, before any planning of that, you should consider several aspects that influence the design of procedures of the mixed method study. We have four important aspects, which are timing, weighting, and mixing and theorizing, as you have seen in the slide here. For the timing, you as a researcher, you need to consider the timing for your qualitative and quantitative data collection. Whether it will be, phases sequentially or, gathered at the same time concurrently. When the data are collected in phases, either the qualitative or the quantitative data can come first. So it depends on the initial intent of your research. So when qualitative data are collected first, the intent is to explore the topic with the participant at site. So then you as a researcher, you expand the understanding through a second phase in which data are collected from a large number of people, typically sample size that represent the population. So when the data are collected concurrently, both quantitative and qualitative data are gathered at the same time, and the implementation is simultaneous. So in many projects, it may be unworkable to collect data over an expanded time period. For example, health, sciences, or health scientists, they are so busy, treating, patients, so they have really limited time for data collection in the field. So in this case, it is more manageable for them to collect both quantitative and qualitative data, at the same time, when they are in the field. rather than to revisit the field multiple times for data collection, sometimes qualitative and quantitative. The second one is weighting, which is the second factor that goes into, designing the procedure in the weight or, priority given to qualitative or quantitative research in a particular study. So in some studies, the weight may be equal. In other studies, it may emphasize one on another, maybe emphasize more on qualitative rather than quantitative, or vice versa. The priority for one type depend on the interest of the researcher itself, the audience for the study, for example, faculty, committee, professionals association, and what the researcher or investigator seeks to emphasize in this research. In practical terms, where occurs in a mixed method study, through such strategies in whether quantitative or qualitative information is emphasized first, the extent of treatment of one type of data or the other in the project, or the use of primary and inductive approach. For example, generating themes in qualitative, or deductive approach, testing a theory or hypothesis. Sometimes researchers intentionally use one form of data in a supportive role to a larger study, as found in some experimental trials. And the third one is mixing. Mixing the data and in a larger sense, mixing the research questions, philosophy, the interpretation. Actually, it is difficult at best when one considers that qualitative data consists of text and images, and quantitative data is purely based on numbers. So there are two different questions here. You need to ask, when does you as a researcher mix in a mixed method study, and how does mixing occur? So the first question, is much easier to answer than the second. Mixing of two types of data may occur at several stages: the data collection, the data analysis, interpretation, or at all of them. But for proposal, or developing a proposal using a mixed method, it is important to discuss, and present, in a proposal or in your research when the mixing will occur. So how the data are mixed has received considerable, recent attention. Mixing means either that the qualitative and the quantitative data are actually merge on one and or the other. So kept separate on the other end of the continuum, or combined in some way between these two extremes. So the two database may be kept separate but connected. For example, in the two-phase project that begins with quantitative phase, the analysis of the data and its result can be used to identify participants for qualitative data collection follow-up phase. In this situation, the quantitative and qualitative data are connected during the phase of the research. So connected in a mixed method research means a mixing of quantitative and qualitative research are connected between the data analysis and the first phase of the research, and that the data collection of the second phase of the research. So in another study, the researcher may collect both quantitative and qualitative data concurrently and integrate or merge the two databases by transforming the qualitative themes into count and comparing this count with descriptive quantitative data. So in this case, the mixing consists of integrating the two databases by actually merging the quantitative data with the qualitative data. So in the final scenario, scenario, the researcher also may have the primary aim to collect, one form of data, say quantitative, and have the other form of data, we say qualitative, to provide supportive information. So neither integrating the data nor connecting across phases is being utilized. Instead, here the researcher is embedding the secondary, form of data with a larger study having a different form, of data as primary database. The secondary database provide a supporting role in this case. So the last one is theorizing or transforming perspective. Here, a final factor or to consider is whether a larger theoretical perspective guided the entire design. It may be a theory from the social sciences, example, adoption theory, leadership theory, attribution theory, or a broad theoretical lens such as advocacy, participatory lens, example, gender, race, class, whatever. So researchers maybe bring theories, frameworks, and to their inquiries, and these theories may be made explicit in the mixed method, study, or be implicit and not mentioned. Let's now we go and see how usually when we talk about sequential and we talk about concurrent methods. So we have actually 6 mixing here. We have 3 for sequential and 3 for concurrent. First one, sequential exploratory. This is quantitative followed by qualitative. Usually quantitative, but can be qualitative or equal. Interpretation phase here, and theoretical perspective, just now we talked, it may be present, it may not. And then we have sequential exploratory. So from the name you will know you are going to explore. So 100% you will start as qualitative, then followed by quantitative. Usually qualitative, but can be quantitative or equal. And here also interpretation phase, and again theoretical perspective may be present. So the third one, sequential transformative. Here either qualitative followed by quantitative or quantitative followed by qualitative, doesn't matter. It depends on your aim. So here qualitative, quantitative, or equal. So also interpretation phase, and here theoretical perspective definitely should be present. For example, conceptual framework, advocacy, empowerment, and so on. And the fourth is concurrent triangulation. So concurrent collection of quantitative and qualitative, preferably equal, but can be quantitative or qualitative more weightage. So here, the stage of integration, interpretation, or analysis phase. And here, the theoretical perspective may be present. Then we have a concurrent nested, or here concurrent collection of qualitative and quantitative. So could be quantitative or qualitative. And here the stage of integration will be only in the analysis phase, and the theoretical perspective may be present, maybe not. And the last one, concurrent transformative, and here concurrent collection of both qualitative and quantitative. The priority could be qualitative, then quantitative, or equal. Then the stage of integration, usually an analysis phase, but also can be during the interpretation phase. But here, the theoretical perspective, it definitely must be present. As I say, conceptual framework or another concept. Let's say the notation to describe the mixed method design. Here we refer to mixed method design. If it is a shorthand like the first one, quan and qual, quant 10 means that here the quantitative method. For example, if we choose this quant, that means you are using only quantitative method. If we use the upper case letter quant or qual, if there is qual means priority, means qualitative methods are prioritized in the design, then followed maybe in a quant. So we have also lowercase letter quant or qual. If quant supplement means here the qualitative methods have a lesser priority in the design. Then we have plus sign, like for example here, both of them, capital or uppercase, quant and qual. Sorry. So the quant and qual methods occur concurrently. They have the same weightage. The arrow means from quantitative to qualitative. The method occur in sequence, quant followed by qual. And this is, the main one. So it is, in uppercase. Parenthesis, quant, then between bracket qual. So here the qual method is embedded with a larger quantitative framework or nested. So double arrow, we have qual and quant here. The methods are implemented in a recursive process. Qualitative, then followed by quantitative, then followed by qualitative, then followed by quantitative, and etc. Then we have brackets. Qual goes to quant, then goes between a bracket, a quant plus a qual. Here, mixed method. So we have the quantitative as the major, then plus a qualitative is used within a single study project, within a series of studies. And then here we have an equal sign, quantitative, then arrow to qualitative, equal, explain the result. So the purpose for mixing the method. So now we go and talk about the 6 element of method. We have, as I say, sequential explanatory design, sequential exploratory design, sequential transformative design, concurrent triangulation design, concurrent embedded design, and concurrent transformative design. So we start. What is sequential design? Sequential designs usually involve multiple phases of data collection during which either a qualitative or a quantitative data collection method dominates. So the research purpose and a particular of a set research question determine the particular sequence in the data collection. So the first one is sequential exploratory design. As we can see here from quantitative data plus a result, follow up with qualitative data and result, and we make the interpretation. So this design is typically characterized by an initial quantitative phase, which is then followed by qualitative data collection phase. So the two methods are integrated, during the interpretation phase. Finding from the qualitative study component are used to explain and contextualize the result from the quantitative study component. And this study, you as a researcher, you view the study as a two-phase project. As I say, you collect qualitative data first, then you follow by qualitative. Typically a greater emphasis is placed on quantitative data. Then an example, you first conduct a survey and then follow up with a few individuals interviews who answer positively to the question through interviews or open-ended interviews. So when do you use sequential explanatory design? So when you want to explain the quantitative result in a more depth with the quantitative data. For example, statistical differences among groups, individuals who score at extreme levels. So when you do quantitative, you may not really know exactly why this happened and how this happened. So you need, a qualitative, a rich description to explain to you that. So when you want to identify appropriate participant to study in a more depth, qualitatively. An example of that, for example, Neri and Co 2003 conducted a study where the two principal research aim were first is to identify the proportion of individuals with cerebral palsy or and spinal cord injury. So multiple sclerosis or arthritis who report difficulties with accessing and or utilizing needed healthcare services. The second research question is the first one is quantitative. The second is qualitative, to identify reasons. So why this happened and how. So that is qualitative approach, to identify reason for access or utilization difficulties and the consequences that these may produce. So the quantitative component use a multi-stage stratified probability sampling approach. So the survey identified a group of access stressed individuals who reported substantial problems in accessing and or using healthcare facilities or services. The qualitative study component focused on this group to examine what specific barriers made access, problematic, and what consequences resulted from not receiving care when needed. So the finding encompassed a broad range of barriers, for example, transportation, facility, accessibility, provider disability, competence, and consequences of unmet access, for example, deterioration of the physical functioning, work absenteeism, social isolation. So the research uses qualitative research, to sequentially inform quantitative finding. So the study is a good example of how the quantitative study component identified subpopulation that could be characterized as an access stress. Also, the combination of quantitative and qualitative method in the context of one study enabled us to determine the magnitude, frequency, and distribution of access and utilization difficulties in this population, as well as understand the scope and the nature of barriers and consequences from a perspective of the respondent. So you can see now we have, based on this example, a complete understanding of the problem. Then the second one is a sequential exploratory design. This strategy typically consists of an initial phase of qualitative data collection, that is followed by quantitative data collection. Findings from both data collection methods are analyzed and integrated during the imputation. Here, also from the term exploratory, exploring. So viewing the study again as a two-phase project, qualitative data collection precedes quantitative data collection. Typically, a greater emphasis is placed on qualitative data here first. Example, you collect qualitative diary entries, analyze the data for teams, develop categories and tips, and then develop an instrument based on these themes to measure, attitude on a quantitative survey administered to a large sample. Usually we use it when it's only little known about the phenomenon. We don't have a really very strong theoretical background, to explain the phenomenon. So we don't know what variables that we are going to use, in order to quantitatively, address that problem. So what we do first, we have qualitative research to identify those themes and develop them. Then we develop the instrument or the questionnaire based on that themes and do the quantitative. So when do you use sequential exploratory design? To develop an instrument when one is not available, first explore, then develop, I just explained, to develop a classification or a typology for testing, or to identify the most important variables to study quantitatively when these variables are not known, as just now also I explained. So a good example here is also Neri et al. Conducted a study to inform the development of a survey, tool that focused on physical activity and a secondary condition after a spinal cord injury. These studies sought to first understand the motivating and inhibiting factors to physical activity and exercise in people after a spinal cord injury. Second, to develop, test, and implement the survey tool that examine self-reported physical activity after this spinal cord injury and its relationship with the secondary condition. So in this study, the qualitative exploratory data collection preceded the quantitative study component. So the focus here is specifically explore barriers and facilitators of exercise. Understanding these factors was critical to inform the development of the survey tool, which included items on chronic and secondary conditions, health risk behavior, hospital and healthcare utilization, physical functioning, exercise activities, and patterns like therapy, wheelchair use, and community integration, and so on. Then we have the sequential transformative design. So unlike the sequential exploratory or explanatory design, in sequential transformative design, there are not or predominant implementation sequence. So this sequential design is guided by a particular theoretical orientation or advocacy lens, and findings are integrated during the interpretation phase. So you can see the first, we may have qualitative as the major, followed by quantitative, or we may have the quantitative first as a major, then followed by qualitative. So what are the characteristics of sequential transformative design? Again, has two distinct data collection phases, and a theoretical perspective is used, to guide the study. We must have a theoretical perspective to guide us. The purpose is to use methods that will best serve the theoretical perspective of the researcher. So an example here, Grulu et al. 2007 described the sequential transformative design of a cultural influences on mental health problems and the advantages of the study of using this design. The study commenced with a quantitative telephone survey of the community, which include the general health questionnaire. The quantitative phase of the study was followed by qualitative interviews, which were theoretically driven. That's very important. You see, between the first sequential exploratory design, it is not theoretically driven, but here it is theoretically driven. So these interviews enabled the researcher to explore the cultural health experiences related to the non-use of mental health facilities by Vietnamese and West Indian participants living in the urban area of Montreal. So another one, now we have a concurrent design, which has three. The first one, concurrent triangulation design. But before, what is concurrent design? In concurrent mixed method research strategies, qualitative and quantitative data are collected as the name indicate at the same time or in a parallel. So in a concurrent triangulation design, this design involves a single study containing qualitative and quantitative data collection, which is conducted at the same time. The purpose of this, type of investigation is to validate the findings generated by each method through the evidence produced by the others. So here, the characteristics of the concurrent triangulation design are first, collecting both qualitative and quantitative data, collecting this data at the same time in the research procedures. analyzing the quantitative and qualitative data separately, comparing or combining the result of the quantitative and qualitative analysis. Then example, collect survey data, let's say quantitative, and collect individual interviews, qualitative, and then compare the result. So when we use concurrent triangulation design, when you want to combine the advantages of quantitative, let's say trend, large number generalization, with qualitative detail, small numbers, in-depth analysis and rich description. When you want to validate your quantitative finding with qualitative data, when you want to expand your quantitative finding with some open-ended qualitative data, example surveys with closed and open-ended data. An example of the concurrent triangulation design is, in the longitudinal study of maternal and child well-being, McAuley et al. 2006 conducted semi-structured in-depth interviews with mothers and collected quantitative data using several validated scales. For example, parenting stress index. They use Edinburgh postnatal depression scales, Rosenberg self-esteem scales. At the same time, home visit. The authors also identified numerous family stressors in interviews, which were corroborated in the quantitative, maternal stress index scales. Similarly, the objective measures, EPDS, addressing emotional well-being that indicated a high level of maternal depression was supported by findings from the interviews in which mother reported low energy level, despondency, or and anxiety attacks. Other qualitative and quantitative measures regarding well-being, maternal perceptions of child development and social support show similar convergent finding. The authors note that concurrent use of qualitative and quantitative measure add the depth and the scope of the finding. Then we have a concurrent embedded design. So the term concurrent, indicate that both, qualitative and quantitative data are being collected at the same time. However, in concurrent, embedded or nested studies, also we call it nested study, one of the method dominates, while the other one is embedded or nested, So the research question to be answered by the embedded method may be of a secondary nature or address a very a specific subtopic that is connected with the general research questions. So we can see here, we have here, for example, the main is quantitative and qualitative embedded in quantitative. But here, the main is qualitative, but quantitative is embedded in qualitative. So we have, for example, quantitative pre-test data result, then embedded qualitative process. Then we have another quantitative post-test data analysis and the result, then interpretation. So characteristics of concurrent embedded or nested design. One, data collection phase during which both quantitative and qualitative data are collected. One is determined to be the primary methods. The primary methods guides the project, and the secondary provides a supporting role in the procedures. The secondary method is embedded or nested within the predominant method and address different questions. An example for that, or for this concurrent embedded design, Strasser et al. 2007 conducted a concurrent nested design to explore eating-related distress or advanced male cancer patient and their female partner. The primary method used in the study was focus group, which were attended by patient and their parents, with the conduct of this group and analysis of the data based on grounded theory or qualitative techniques. So the secondary or nested focus of the study was the differences in patient and their parent assessment of the intensity and symptoms and the degrees of cachexia-related symptoms of eating-related disorders of patients. So this secondary information was collected by structured questionnaire, which was completed at the time of the first focus group. So the eating-related distress differed from patient and their parents as indicated in the qualitative finding, and this was complemented by a quantitative finding. Then we have the last one is a concurrent transformative design, like sequential transformative design. This concurrent transformative design, both the qualitative and quantitative data are collected at the same time. So the conduct of the study is informed by a theoretical perspective, and data are integrated during the interpretation phase. So you can see here we have qualitative and quantitative at the same time, backed by a theoretical perspective, and here we have qualitative as the main and quantitative as embedded here. What are the characteristics of the concurrent transformative design? Guided by a theoretical perspective, it must have a theory to drive us, and concurrent collection of both quantitative and qualitative data, and the design may have one method embedded in the other, so that diverse participants are given a choice in the change process of organization. An example of that, example of the concurrent transformative design, Anastario and Miles Boer, 2007, use a concurrent transformative mixed method designed in their cultural anthropological study of time allocation of Honduran immigrants. They use time theory to examine gender variation among 34 Honduran immigrants in the time they spend on personal, example, commuting and interpersonal responsibilities, care, work, and family. So the study was guided by a participatory ethnographic philosophy. Observations and reported activities were quantitatively analyzed for respondent level reliability. The authors conclude that a better understanding of gender differences in time allocation for responsibilities will be critical to inform knowledge about health outcome disparities. So what are the key characteristics of a mixed method design after we explain all the 6 possible designs? So first, rationale for the design. Second, collecting quantitative and qualitative data. Third, priority. Fourth, sequence. Then fifth, data analysis method and design. And the last, diagram of the procedure. Let's explain this one by one. The rationale. Testing or test finding of first phase and explain in a more detailed result of first phase, or provide a more complete understanding than either quantitative or qualitative alone. So collecting both qualitative and quantitative data, either using both numeric data and text data or words data. Then we have the priority. Are they have equal weight, or quantitative carries more weight than qualitative, or qualitative carries more weight than quantitative? This is, you as a researcher will decide on which weight is a more or equal based on the need of your research. So the sequence, collect both quantitative and qualitative data at the same time, or collect quantitative data first followed by qualitative, or collect qualitative data first followed by quantitative. And again, so this is based on the method that we have chosen. The analysis match to design data analysis strategies for triangulation design, or you use data analysis strategies for exploratory design, or you use data analysis strategies for exploratory design, and we have explained that earlier. And diagram for procedures use a notation system or identify priority or identify sequence. So, what are the steps of conducting a mixed method study? First, the first step is determine if the mixed method study is feasible or no. Do you have the resources? Do you have the time? You can finish it within the time framework and within the available resources. Can it be done? Is it the question to be answered, answerable or no? Then step 2, identify the rationale for the mixed method study. Why you want to do it? Is it that using only quantitative is not enough to explain that phenomenon or to answer there is a question? Or using only qualitative, you must or you need or you have to use both of them. Why? You have to explain that. And then the third one, identify the data collecting strategy and type of the design. What is the priority, qualitative or quantitative? The sequence, you start with qualitative first or quantitative first or qualitative, or you do them together. Then the fourth one is develop quantitative and qualitative research questions. Quantitative research questions are totally different from qualitative research questions. Generally, what we know is quantitative research question is mostly about what is happening. But for qualitative research, you go more in deep, how it's happened and why it's happened. So you have to develop this type of question. Number 5, collect quantitative and qualitative data. And as I say, simultaneously in the same time, or first quantitative, then followed by qualitative, or vice versa. Then number 6 is analyze the data separately or concurrently based on your chosen design. And the last one, write the report as 1 or 2 phase study. So in evaluating a mixed method study, first you have to ask this question: does the study employ at least one quantitative method and one qualitative method? If not, then you don't have a mixed method study. Is it called a mixed method or a similar term study? And is there a rationale for why the author intend to mix the method in a single study, and what will be gained from the process? So you have to find answers to those questions. Does the author indicate the type of mixed method study being presented? Alternatively, can you identify the type from reading the rationale or from a visual figure depicting, the flow of the data collection activities? Does the author mention the priority given to quantitative and qualitative data and the sequence of the use in the study? Is the study feasible given that the data to be collected and the amount of money, time, and expertise required? And also, have research questions been written for both quantitative and qualitative methods, in the study? Have quantitative and qualitative data collection procedure been clearly identified? How you're going to collect this data. Are the procedures for data analysis consistent with the type of mixed method, study being presented? And the last, is the written structure of the study, consistent with the type of mixed method, study being presented? So these questions, you need to answer them all and explain them all in your report. So when reviewers or audience read your report and trying to criticize or to evaluate your research, they will find a complete understanding of the method they use and the rationale of using such a method. To here, we come to the end of this lecture class. I hope you enjoyed, the class. If you have any question, you can email me or you can write your question under the comment. I will answer as much or as soon as I can. Thank you very much. I will see you for the next lecture class.